What is up? What's Your Why listeners? We got another episode of the What's Your Why podcast here with Travis Thompson, former track athlete for the University of Oregon, former track coach at the collegiate level, and now owns his own media company. Produces some of the best short stories, telling stories about individuals or companies that you're going to see on the market. I've been a big fan of following him over the last few years because of what he produces and because of the mentality you can see he has at hard work and being gritty. Grit is what we talk about through the whole podcast. It's kind of a recurring theme throughout his life, and we cover his life and kind of to how he's gotten to where he is. I really enjoyed this podcast. Kind of a fanboy moment as I've been following him for so long. But I know you guys are going to enjoy listening to this one. So give it a listen, and if you like it, share it. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Perfect.
Awesome. So you said you were coming down off the mountain.
Yeah, I was up. There's a summit are you familiar with Oregon at all?
Very little, but somewhat.
Yeah, there's this summit, South Sister, that I've been wanting to do this summer, and kind of had a somewhat open morning window and took advantage of it. And it was really, really cool. I'm glad I did it, but I also kind of now have to do a lot of stuff on the back end today. So
no worries. I think it's you got to get in the fun activities of summer while you still can. I'm from North Dakota, so nice. It's starting to get cold here for us now, and we'll have snow within a month probably.
Do you did you grow up in have you been in North Dakota most of your life?
Yeah, I've grown up in North Dakota pretty much my whole life, but I moved away for about 2.5 years. I lived in DC for 4 months, and I lived in Columbus, Ohio for 2 years.
Okay, so we probably have some mutual friends or connections, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so I've been to Oregon, to the Corvallis area, and then down to like Smith Rock for some climbing. And
oh yeah, for sure, it's beautiful there.
Oh yeah, it's gorgeous, and I would love to go back. Spent a little bit of time in Portland, but not much.
Nice, that's awesome, man. Yeah, the Smith Rock area is. You got climbing, and you got just trail running, and there's a bunch of options up there. So over there.
Yeah. So are you from Oregon as well, or where'd you grow up?
Yeah, I grew up in Oregon. Eugene has been my home base since 2006 for college, and then I moved away a couple times just for work in my previous career. I lived in San Francisco, and I spent a little bit of time in Portland, and but I like to think of Eugene and the Oregon coast as my home now. So
okay, that's awesome. So I found you through one of the videos I saw on you did for Cam Hanes and on Gagos, and that was just fascinating. And ever since I've been following you, but I'm also a track fan, and so I been a big fan of like the videos you've produced about running and whatnot. And I thought it'd be great to connect on here. But I coached track for 4 years about here, and so the connection you had between like the video and track and field and just running in general has been pretty sweet to kind of follow for the last couple of years.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I definitely have that kind of that passion for running and that background, and then just with this career in film and storytelling, it's been a cool combination, and then just kind of allowing it to grow over the last half a decade. It's really cool the people we get a chance to meet, and we've done this from time to time. We've hopped on a few podcasts, and really like just connecting with people. It's cool you have the running connection, so that's always pretty much anyone that runs that's doing something, I always try to connect with them. So
yeah, I try to run as much as I can. I got a bum knee right now, but I'm not too fast either. I assume that you could probably crush me in most races, but
man, I run with I actually enjoy people that just love it. I don't really necessarily care how fast you are. I just like have a passion for it. So
that's what I've kind of seen coming out of like once I got out of coaching and everybody's, they're trying to kill it there, and like, they're younger mindsets for sure, but kind of got in the trail running scene, and it just seems like everybody's just there for a good time.
Oh, trail running I mean, track and field obviously is pretty competitive. As you get into more masters stuff, it starts to chill out a little bit. But trail running is such a cool scene because there's like a lot of support. It's a grind up in the mountains, and people are partying after or just hanging out. And I really like the culture of some of these non-track and field running related events that are going on. So,
have you done any like races or like trail running races since?
Yeah, I'm like, as I'm getting older and building more of like an aerobic, I was always a sprinter. So I really, 400 meters was like 400, 800 was my thing. And then as I've gotten older and I've built more of an aerobic kind of base, I'm starting to explore more of the mountain running, trail running, 5K, whatever, half marathon. Just, I think that's kind of the progression as you get older. You start to, and I really just love running. So for me, anything I can do with the sport as I get older, I'm probably going to go in that direction. So,
yeah, no, there's something about running. I think also you could probably include walking in it as well, just a longer endurance that I have found fascinating over the last few years. And it probably in part from like seeing some of the content that even you did with Goggins and Cam Hanes, but like it obviously brings them joy. At least it looks like it brings them joy. Sometimes it sounds like Goggins hates it, but he just does it. But
those guys are crazy. I mean, they've kind of turned into this. I think they love it, but I think once you start realizing how many people they're inspiring, it doesn't necessarily even matter how much they love it. It's almost like they're doing it for like the greater good of kind of some sort of motivational speaking through hard work. So I always respect that. I mean, I think Cam obviously loves to work hard, but like I said, I think if you asked him, he'd probably say like his avenue of motivating people is probably almost as important as like whether or not he loves to run or not.
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy, but I love running in groups. And I don't know, I'm sure you've experienced that as well in training and whatnot, or even just now with friends, but it's so much better. And it builds such a community, kind of like maybe even almost like a pack mentality, but
100%.
like pushing each other and whatnot.
Yeah, I agree with you. Running in a group. I mean, I do a lot of stuff solo. I've always been really like, I don't know. Some of the stuff I do is like super early in the morning, so it's hard to find people to come with me. But I agree with you. Like getting a good group of people together, it doesn't matter. Someone could be like running 10-minute miles on the track, and someone could be running 430 miles on the track, and it's like I just like being around people that want to do cool stuff through running. It doesn't I've never really judged people based off of like whether or not they're fast. So
no, I always look up to it, but I'm nobody to judge either. I'm almost always by myself as well. I play games when I go run. I have a wellness center about a quarter mile from my apartment here, but I play a game of being the last person on the treadmill of everybody who's running when I get there. And then it's kind of mental sometimes. I was looking for a 4-mile run one day and went 15, but it was nice and slow at least. So it just turned into a long slugging fest with this girl. I think she realized it because she kept making eye contact with me. It's probably because like, who's this creepy guy looking at me trying to get me off the treadmill?
That's awesome.
I'm interested. I would like to kind of backtrack it.
Are we starting the show?
Oh, dude, we started right away.
Okay, cool. I was like curious. I thought this was okay. Good to know. Good to know.
Yeah, no worries. Probably I should have said that right away. But I would like to kind of start with kind of like where you kind of grew up, how you grew up. You said you're from Eugene area, correct?
Yeah, I originally grew up on the Oregon coast in a commercial fishing family. My dad was a runner back in the 60s at Oregon State University, back when he was on a team when have you heard the name Dick Fosbury, kind of the guy that created the
Mm-hmm.
Fosbury flop?
Mm-hmm.
One of the probably the best known high jumper in the world. So he was on the team in the late 60s there, and was always, he was a kind of a world-class runner, and I kind of knew he was, but I never really, I don't know, I wasn't directly drawn to running early on. I was always like into basketball and a bunch of other stuff. But growing up on the coast, I think I kind of slowly was exposed to running through him, and then that kind of, I think, has taken, it was a late maturity into like how much I have a passion for it, and how much it's, I guess, almost been like an avenue to grow my company, and keeps me motivated. And I mean, if I look at my life, like I would say like most of my um I don't know how to exactly say it, but I would say most of the things that have happened in my life have some connection to the world of running, which is really cool to think about.
Mm-hmm. So did you run in like junior high, high school as well?
So I my first year running was actually junior year of high school. It was big basketball. Like, I mean, from the time I could like dribble a basketball, I was like, thought I was going to go into the NBA, and was pretty good at basketball. But I think right around maybe like sophomore year of high school, I started to realize that like I maybe had more long-term potential in running. Gave it a try. My high school coach kind of convinced me in a PE class to go try running, and found out that I was better at that than basketball. And I kind of saw a future with getting a scholarship, and maybe paying for my college. And it was a slow birth from there. I would say right around that junior year of high school, I was just like, okay, I can see how I could eventually build a passion for this, like basketball. And over the course of the next few years going into college, I kind of transitioned my love for hoops to more of a love for running. And yeah, it just started from there.
When you were younger, did you kind of have some like role models you looked up to? Like, when you started running, maybe like your junior year of high school, was there people like you looked up to that kind of inspired you as a runner?
I would say I was more inspired from like athletes, and they kind of inspired me with running. Like
Mm-hmm.
I remember this is going to date me a little bit, but I used to record on VHS like Michael Jordan's games. And I still have a few of them when he played, I think it was, I forget what, like mid 90s. And so, obviously Jordan wasn't a runner, but like that work ethic and like
Mm-hmm.
his determination, same with Kobe. Like I was just like, was really into those athletes. Allen Iverson, like I remember I like was obsessed with Allen Iverson. I just loved his like swagger on the court, and obviously work ethic. And so those people, I think, were always something that I was like, okay, like they don't play, they don't run, but I love that kind of that gritty work ethic, you know, work harder than the next person aspect of those athletes. And so I would say they kind of inspired me. And then from a local level, was always inspired, by my dad, and just kind of how he kind of was able to take the sport of running and allow him to do some things. I remember he used to always tell me back in the day, growing up in a small town, he's like, oh, I ran in Madison Square Garden. And I was like, for me, I was like, that's like crazy to think about.
Mm-hmm.
And then now as I've gotten older, it's like, not that crazy, but little things like that, being like, oh man, like I can't imagine what it's like to run in Madison Square Garden. Those things stand out in my head when I was younger in terms of
Mm-hmm.
just like little pieces of information that I was like, well, maybe if I can get good enough, I could travel to New York and run myself. And, eventually I was able to do that. And, just, I was never an Olympian, but at the same time, like those little goals for me, like getting a chance to
Mm-hmm.
travel with a Division I team and wear a University of Oregon Duck jersey and compete in New York, like those are like the things that really stand out in my head. And I think you could talk to another athlete, it's like, oh my, it was so cool winning an Olympic medal. And so I'm not one of those people. I have a bunch of close friends that have done
Mm-hmm.
things like that, but for me, like those little wins are almost as important to me as winning a gold medal. So
Right on. Well, you even downplay like Madison Square Garden. Like that's a awesome thing. That's so cool. But Like when you were graduating high school, did you think you were going to go to Oregon, or were you thinking of other schools as well?
I very specifically remember being at a meet in high school, and there was the coach at the time at Oregon was Vin Lanana, and my high school coach was like, he's still one of my big mentors. He's just like one of those guys that just, you know, makes you think you can do anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh man, that's the Oregon coach. And he's like, go up and talk to him. And I was like freaking out. I'm like, I can't. But so I think he went up and talked to him and said, hey, I got a guy in the stands who wants to go to Oregon. And, I don't know exactly the conversation. But just having my coach be like, hey, there's the Oregon coach. Like, you're good enough to go talk to him. Like, those things I think kind of broke the walls down and made me realize, okay, like I might not be like, the number one 400 guy in the country, but like maybe if I work hard enough and kind of figure out a way to, not work the system, but just like
Mm-hmm.
no matter what, like I was going to get on the Oregon team. If I had to walk on or if I had to go to a junior college, which I did go to a junior college, I've always, like you said, like we were talking about earlier, that like that grittiness of like a Kobe or an Iverson. Like I was like, okay, I'm going to go to a junior college for 2 years, get good enough to where they at least let me walk on to the Oregon team. And so that's eventually what happened. I got a chance to get a spot on the Oregon team after 2 years at Lane Community College out of high school. I always knew like there was a 0% chance that I, wasn't going to make the Oregon team. And, I just kind of worked accordingly until eventually that happened. And I remember that first workout or that first couple months being on that Oregon team. Like I got goosebumps every day in practice. We would do these, sessions in Hayward, and I was like, damn, like I said, those small wins. Like I wasn't winning Olympic medals, but like that to me, like was just being like, okay, like I'm on the team, I'm working out in Hayward. Goosebumps every day for at least the first 6 months, and I actually get like goosebumps thinking about it right now. So
It's an iconic name in track and field, just is Hayward, and I would love to go out there sometime and see I guess the new stadium now, but it would have been incredible to see the old one as well. I coach at a CrossFit gym here in town, and it's a North Dakota State alumni who would go. He goes to trials every time it takes place, and we were geeking out about it one time. Then he went out for the trials in 2000. Would have been for the 2016 Olympics, I believe. And we were just geeking out about track and field, and he was like, there's not many people in CrossFit who know about what a Hayward Field is and whatnot. But that has to be an incredible moment. And what was it like getting onto the team after grinding out the 2 years in junior college?
I think if I had to like look back on I'm 34, so let's go back 15 years to 18, 19. I think it's always just been about like I like to set goals, and there's never I mean this in a non like arrogant way, so I got to be a little careful here, but like I really like to just be like, hey, this is going to happen. And at Lane, it was always just like, okay, like this is what I've got to do. Like I've got to work here, get good enough to where they'll at least get me a spot. And so, that transition from Lane to Oregon, those first 2 years at Lane were tough because, from an ego standpoint, like you see people that are going to USC, or you see people that are going to Cal, or, and that was tough. I was like, God, I'm going to a junior college. Like, there's not much bragging rights when you go to a junior college. But in hindsight, it was such a great way to develop. I got my first 2 years of school paid for completely. So there was, a financial move by going to a junior college. So I'm a big junior college proponent. You might talk to another family or a parent that, it's like, you got to go Ivy League, or you got to go Stanford, or, I totally respect that. But there is nothing wrong with going junior college. And I started to slowly realize that. And I think like I said, it just gave me like a little bit more of a chip on my shoulder to be like, let me show you what it's like to go to a junior college and then end up on the Oregon track team in that kind of gritty way. So yeah, I mean, I think that overall that path from Lane to Oregon was not the most ideal and maybe not what people dream of when they're in high school about how to get there. But I'll tell you what, like when I got to Oregon's team, every practice, I was just like, always felt like I was like, had to prove something. And that grittiness, I mean, it doesn't matter like how you find it or whatever it is. I always like look for that grittiness, even as an adult now in my mid 30s. It's like, I enjoy finding those things that maybe motivate you and allow you to be like just a little bit more fired up. And hopefully for the rest of my life, I can kind of, maybe even like fabricate those things to just be like, okay, like I got to work a little bit harder. I got to be a little bit grittier to do this. And yeah, that I would say just in a word, like junior college taught me grittiness, which allowed me to be even more hardworking at that next level at Oregon.
Where do you think that the grittiness came from? Because you can't just, it probably came earlier in your life than junior college. Like you probably had it growing up or it was instilled in you some way. Do you think you could pinpoint kind of like where that came from? Was it like your father? Was it your mother? Your coach in high school?
I mean, the first person I'd point to would be my dad. He's always just been like, such a hard worker. So I think seeing that probably rubbed off on me a little bit, or a lot of it. And then I always just tried to surround myself with people that were really just gritty, just doing stuff, in the hard work type of way. So start with my dad. I'd say, some friends and some family members, my mom as well. It's not like my mom is obviously a great, awesome person, super important to me, but she's more of like the loving, caring person. And my dad is more of the like, let's go get up at 4:00 in the morning and work, 20 hours today. And so, yeah, I think that combination of having him and then my mom who taught me how to be, a little bit more balanced, I think has been an important thing. And then I've always just been like super internally motivated. I've never wanted to, I've always wanted to try to see how far I could take things. And so some of it probably comes from within. And as I get older, it definitely comes from within. I always try to just be my own biggest motivator. It'll be interesting to see as I get older, like where those things come from. And I think as you get older, you always just have someone else come into your life that you get motivated from. But I get motivated.
Sure.
Anyone that's in my life, I get motivated from in a little way. They might not even know it. But someone here, someone there, like I just take little pieces of information from people and I'm like, okay, these people motivate me. And like I said, I bet you half of people in my life don't even realize it, but I'm like getting motivation from them.
Yeah. It's kind of like the saying, the 5 people that surround you. And I definitely get motivation from like the 5 people closest to me. Or even like the mindsets I try to listen to, whether it's like audiobooks or podcasts. And like the audio I have coming in, obviously motivates you as well. But have you noticed that work ethic and that grittiness transfer over into post-college as well? Like, I don't know what your previous careers were, but like what did that look like outside of college?
Yeah, I mean, when I knew I wanted to stay in the sport. And so my original path was like, okay, I want to be a coach because I really like the X's and O's. I'm constantly thinking about training philosophy. And I coached for, I think 7 years at the college level. Started at junior college level, had a brief stint at Oregon State University, and then ended up getting a job at University of San Francisco. And that career was incredible, but it just wasn't for me. I really struggled with like a couple things. One was like the amount you had to recruit. Like I love to coach, but in order to be a great coach at the college level, coaching is like 20% and like all the other stuff is like 80% of it. And that part I didn't have a passion for, I started to realize. And, I think I slowly started to be like, okay, like what's the next path here? And when I transitioned out of that career, I always wanted to be a business owner. I wasn't quite sure what, but like I got a chance to see people that I look up to that were entrepreneurial, and they get a chance to, set their own time. You can work as hard or as little as you want. And depending on how successful you want to be, you can, decide. And that always motivated me. One of the things with college coaching or any career where you get a check every 2 weeks is sometimes you can do 80 hours a week or 40 hours a week, but you're kind of on a fixed income. And I was always like hungry for something to where it was like, whatever your input was in, like you could potentially get more output, from not just money. I'm talking about like growing a company. And that part was like really, really exciting for me when I first started. I'm like, oh, wow. Like the more I work and the smarter I get and the better I get, I can grow my business. Obviously part of it is a financial thing, but the other part of it is just like you're getting a chance to scale this idea you have. And I really, really am motivated by, like, if I had to pinpoint why I love business ownership, it is that sink or swim thing where it's like your maximum upside, or if you don't do anything, like you're dead in the water. And for other careers, you can kind of skim and get by and you're going to get a salary. And it's kind of, I don't know, it's very unmotivating to me personally.
Mm-hmm. No, I definitely feel that. And I definitely feel the drive to like start my own business at some point, like the entrepreneurial drive. And I've felt it for a long time. Haven't done it yet, but trying to build out of grad school here. But when you this is gonna go back a little bit, but when you were in that college role of coaching, did you feel partially held back by not being able to kind of do your own thing with that entrepreneurial mindset?
I think for me personally, like I wouldn't call it held back. I mean, I was young. I'm still young, and you're young, and we're all young. I think it's just one of those things where like I just think it was a period in my life where I needed to experience it. I don't regret it at all. I think it was such an important experience for me to be in that college setting. But sometimes putting yourself in those settings that are ultimately not right for you long term are like the most important thing. So that situation of spending, whatever, 6 or 7 years in the college coaching world, like I wouldn't trade it for the world, because it showed me what I want, what I don't want, what I want in a career, what I want in life. And so, albeit maybe it was hard to be as motivated as I am now as a business owner, I would not trade that experience for the world, because I just don't think I would have learned all the things that I know now, I guess, if that makes sense.
No, for sure makes sense. And then just because I'm fascinated in coaching, it's one of the things like on the side that I study. Well, I guess it's also part of my job. But when you were coaching, did you came from the athlete role and then into coaching? Did you go through like training and skill development to become a coach, or was it mostly just based on your experience as an athlete?
I think I first realized that I had a passion for potentially coaching after school. I had a stress fracture my junior year, and my college coach at the time I remember I was on a treadmill kind of doing some rehab, and he came up to me. He's like, "Hey, would you be interested in being like a graduate assistant?" And I was like, "Yeah, that would be cool." And I think from there, I kind of started to be like, "Hey, let me like think of like, how can I become a student of the sport before I'm a coach?" And so I was always asking him questions about training, or like listening to my body and other people's body, and being like, okay, like if we do this session on this day, why are we taking 48 hours? Why are we taking 72 hours in between? Or like, what's going on with our weight training? Or so I always was like really interested in it, rather than just like showing up like a zombie and just being like, okay, what's up for the day? And then doing it. I was always like behind the scenes, like kind of slowly building my coaching repertoire and being like, okay, let me become educated into like why we're doing this stuff. I had a great college coach in terms of like training philosophy, and a lot of the things he did with us as athletes at University of Oregon. I always was like, okay, like what are the things that work? What are the things that I maybe think could be tweaked a little bit? And so as I went into college coaching, I kind of took the things I learned there and then maybe took some things that I thought I liked a little bit more and kind of built my own philosophy. And if I would have stayed in that career for 30, 40 years or whatever, I think that would have been like a fun progression. But like I said, I take that now and do it in my business now.
Yeah. And I think it's it's one of those roles where you can see not instant, but over several months, you can see if things you are doing is working.
Yeah.
I came from the education world. That's where I got my undergrad and master's degree in. And so applying those concepts throughout coaching, track, and other things I do as well, you can see if what you are doing is building buy-in from the kids or the athletes or the people in your classes. If it's slowly growing their skills and them as an athlete, you know it's working. If it's not, you have to shift gears.
Yep.
And now I would like to dive into kind of like your company. How did that get started? Where you're more interested in film than coaching?
Yeah. I mean, so when I first started, I had recently left college coaching
Mhm.
and I kind of saw this, like, I don't want to say need, but I saw this opportunity to tell stories of people that were doing cool stuff and they had connections to industries. So, professional runner leads to the contract that they have, whether it's Nike or New Balance or Under
Mhm.
Armour. So I was like, that there was a web there. Then I knew someone that was in natural resources, and I was like, okay, public figure that's in politics and natural resources. Maybe if I film and tell his story, I can then get contracts from that web.
Mhm.
Um, Advertising or a small business. So I think those things, to me, early on, I saw there was an opportunity there, and I think I got lucky early, and I was able to connect with a few friends that had not necessarily a giant social following, but had a giant connection to the industries that they were a part of. And I'll never forget my first, like, I don't know, legitimate contract that I was like, wow, like this is a career now for me. I filmed my buddy out in Junction City, who is a farmer and connected to agriculture and politics. And I just made this kind of 60-second highlight of like what he was doing. He's a flyer and he's a farmer and he's got some airplanes. I just made this thing and put it out onto social media. And I got a phone call from a agriculture company, and they essentially were just like, hey, we'd like to hire you to do some stories for us. And I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
Mhm.
They were like, why don't you put together a proposal? So at that point, I mean, I knew how to recruit and I knew how to coach, but I didn't know how to proposal write. So, I think I locked myself in a room and learned, Adobe, and learned how to write a proposal, and came up with a number, and they ended up accepting it. And then that was just like, I still, can so vividly remember them being like, okay, sounds good, when do we start? And I'm like, wow, like this career started in a couple days. So yeah, it's just, honestly, it's still crazy to think about. I hope I never like forget about that. That was such an important thing
Yeah.
for me. And then from there, one went to two, and then two went to
Mhm.
four, and then eventually I was like, okay, like I can scale this thing up to, you know, um, provide for myself, and have a livelihood, and and then from there we'll see where it goes. And the last, whatever, 5, 6, 7 years has been like such a crazy ride. So
So you've been doing it now for 7 years.
I get confused on those dates. Somewhere around there.
Okay.
It feels like a long time. But it's been incredible. Got a chance to really expand out into like multiple industries, and running was the thing we kind of really got our like opportunity with, natural resources and running, and then from there it's kind of expanded out into all sorts of things. And yeah, just using film, a little bit of photo, but mostly film allows us to make those advertisements and those short format documentary stuff for our clients. And it's yeah, it's crazy. I never, if you would have talked to me at 18, I would not have been like, oh, I'm going to start a advertising company. Like that just was not something that happened. But I'm
So
so glad.
is that ultimately your focus is telling stories? Not as much the athletic side, but mostly the storytelling side.
Yeah, I mean, if you looked at our like trailing 12-month and 24-month kind of contracts, most of the stuff we're doing is in some sort of storytelling. So whether it's with a like a larger footwear company, or if it's with a advertising company for a state or a county, or if it's for a small business, or if it's for some nonprofit, like everyone has some story that they want to tell to help promote or market or sell a product or sell a message. And so that's kind of where we come in. We come in, we create some sort of film or series of films in some sort of duration that they're looking for, and that allows us to have kind of a livelihood. And so I think there's these large scale companies that are creating such great ads for Coca-Cola or Pepsi or Procter and Gamble, or like Nike, or halftime of a Super Bowl. Like that's not what we do. We try to have like really high quality stuff, but we found there's kind of this need for, I don't want to say lesser produced, but like more organic, quick turnaround, but still high quality storytelling. And maybe someday we move to more of like high production stuff. But for me, like I really enjoy this kind of like lesser produced, more gritty storytelling. So,
well, I've seen a few of your videos, and I'm a big fan of your style of content. From what I've seen, and other people who make similar type videos, like the short documentaries of maybe like 15 minutes, or so, or maybe a half hour. But I think it's very fascinating, and it's cool to learn about maybe some individual in the series and follow them through their day in and day out. I know I had another guy on here who does videography for our company, and he loves the quick 30-second video, and that's his passion. And like creating advertisements for like this local cookie brand, and he wants to learn how they do it so well to make you just instantly want their cookies. And I think it's cool to hear the difference of what the two different sides of it. And he has like a fitness background as well, for filming for sporting events of like weightlifting and bodybuilding and powerlifting.
nice.
But definitely a different style, and I think it's cool to see both. But definitely drew me in seeing your a couple of the mini series or docs that you did. Now, one story I'd love to hear a little bit more about is the one that's kind of images behind you. I could not remember his name, but
Justin Gagos.
yeah, I think that's such a fascinating story, and I've kind of followed his Instagram from an outsider's perspective. But I'm guessing you did some work with him.
Yeah, so I'll give you like the short, medium version of it. So we had that connection with Nike, and I got a phone call from someone at Nike like maybe around this time the day before, 3:30. And they said, hey, can you be at this trailhead at 6 a.m. with your camera gear? I didn't even have my camera gear charged. Like I was kind of like, whoa, I don't know if I can pull this off, but we ended up pulling it off. I need rolling shots. So I kind of got a bicycle. And we went out that morning and produced that thing. And he just said, "Hey, we're going to offer the first professional Nike contract to someone with cerebral palsy, or professional Nike running contract with someone with cerebral palsy." And I was like, that sounds incredible. But I didn't really even, I was like, okay, this is cool. Let's film this thing, And we produced it. And I remember as I was filming, I was like, oh, like, I'm not going to cuss, but I was like, oh, this thing is going to be big. Like, I was like, and it wasn't me. It was just Justin's story is so powerful. I was like, I just had to show up and film the thing. And like I said, one of my big things is quick turnaround, or one of our big things is quick turnaround. I went home immediately, like, and sat at my kitchen table and I started editing. I'm like, I got to get this thing back to Nike. Like, I think I spent 2 hours I probably put 20 hours into 2 hours, like locked in, and just was like all in on this thing. Got it back, sent it to the Nike people and sent it to them. And they're like, damn, like, this is incredible. So I'm like, let's roll it out tomorrow morning. I don't even know if we were supposed to do it. I was just like, let's roll it out. And I think Nike like maybe gave us like a yellow light to like potentially roll it out on his social. And then boom, the next day it was like 1,000, 5,000, 10,000. And then it was like local news started calling. And then it was weird to see the news cycle. It was local, then it was state, then it was national, and then it was worldwide. And it was like Good Morning America, BBC, like, and wow. I was like, holy, and I was, it's not me, it's Justin and Nike, but for some reason, like, since our logo was on that film we'd produced, it was very much like I was trying to figure out who to call or what to say yes to or no to. So it was a little bit of a mess. But ultimately, like, I think Sports Illustrated posted it, and I feel like it was like 40 million views in, like, I don't remember. It was something crazy where I was just like, we were getting, I'm sure Justin was just getting blown up. We were getting blown up for just, questions or this, or can we reuse it, and, all around the world. And yeah, that was a great experience. Honestly, like, looking back on it, I more probably enjoy the more kind of, advertising stuff that's a little bit more just kind of flatline, like, what you're getting paid, how the project's going to go, they'll roll it out. But every once in a while, those massive kind of, I don't even want to call it viral, but just create stories. I love stuff like that. And Justin, we're good buddies, such a good dude. His story is really what matters. Like, it doesn't matter about me or our company. Like, that guy is so motivating behind me. And just very thankful to have been part of it.
Now, is that how much work have you done further work with him beyond just that first day?
We've done some things for some of his brand sponsors since then. So, let's say he has a supplement sponsor, or, whatever sponsor he has, he'll call me sometimes and we'll produce an ad for him. And then after that, we started doing more stuff with some specific running groups with Nike. So yeah, I'd say that was like, selfishly, there was definitely like that scaled us up. And I think it also scaled Justin up to where he, I know he did a lot of motivational speaking, and his opportunities for the next few years after that with Nike and beyond were, I think directly connected to kind of the success of that ad, and also just his overall message. I think that was just a platform that allowed him more people to know who he was. And then, it was just really cool to see that, despite all the negatives of social media, that was a positive. And I was just really glad to be a part of that one. So,
yeah. Did you feel like a certain amount of like pressure to put, I don't know how much you edited his video or anything like that, or what kind of goes into that, because I'm not a video guy by any means. But did you feel like a certain amount of pressure to make this like perfect for him? And then especially work you've done since with it blowing up so big and with such an incredible story?
Um, maybe I would connect this back to being an athlete and running, but like obviously like a little bit of pressure is important because it keeps you on your
Mhm.
toes and makes you sharp. But I've never like over analyzed the pressure. I've always just really been like, hey, like this is a story. Let me get this good and get this to them. I've talked with people that are in this kind of world of storytelling and film where they'll almost like their Achilles heel or their crutch is like they spend so much time obsessing over like one thing, right? And there's a style of storytelling that's important. You know, like if you're making a halftime ad for Pepsi, like you've got 100 people looking at the coloring or, you know, down to the micro scale of that ad. But in the world we live in, I would say there's imperfections in every one of the stories we make. But I think if you can get it polished enough, that kind of looser documentary kind of advertising that we do, it's okay to have some imperfections here or there. And so that's how we kind of design it for our clients. You know, every once in a while we'll get a client that, you know, it's really hard to like please them, and
Mhm.
that's fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But for the most part, we work with people that really want a decently fast turnaround. They want good stuff, and we try to be great, but we try not to ever be like, you know, a perfectionist at every single thing because then the product never gets out. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So
I think it adds a certain like maybe, and this might be over analyzing, but a certain realness to the video when it's not perfect because it's more like real life. Would that make sense, or would that be
yeah, yeah,
overthinking it kind of?
yeah. No, I think like I said, I think there's a common theme when we've been chatting about just grittiness.
Mhm.
And if we go to the Cam or David Goggins films we've made, like, I mean, if we had more time, I could break down every imperfection of every film in real time and just be like, hey, camera shake here. Audio, we probably should have ran a different audio here. Um, and I think, but it, like you said, like you watch that film and you feel something, right? Like you're not like
For sure.
watching it, you're not like, oh, like they should have used lav mics instead of shotgun mics. It's like, you know, I might be hard on myself
Mhm.
years later, but like I said, I think that's a world we try not to live in because it can just make you, uh, you know, the world never gets a chance to see your work. Whereas if you're like, you know, if David Goggins calls you and says, hey, I want you to film a documentary and I want it turned around in 2 days. Like if you go sit in a room for 2 years and no one ever sees it, like it would be smarter to get it out in 2 days and make
Mhm.
sure maybe it's not perfect, but it's good enough to where people get excited about it. That's where we try to live in that world. So
Is that the scenario that how that happened?
yeah. Yep. Got a. This is kind of a scenario of like I think my life. um, Cam, pretty good buddies with him now, but you know, he contacted me. I don't remember exactly. Same thing as the Justin thing, and essentially was like, you know, I think Cam called me and said, "Hey, David's coming into town. We're doing this kind of run, lift, shoot thing where we're gonna run some crazy mountain. You know, I can't remember what it was, 20, 30 mile. I don't. It was
Yeah,
something
something like
crazy.
that.
Yeah, and then it was like, and then we're gonna go immediately into shooting, and then we're gonna go immediately into lifting, and like we want you to film it." And I was like, okay, like I have to say yes to this because, you know, Cam obviously has a huge platform and I really
Mhm.
love telling his story. And then David obviously had, like, you can't have those two people come into Eugene and not say yes to it. So
Mhm.
we just said yes, filmed it, produced it, and the same thing. Like I had all this footage, and I remember I was so excited I think I called Cam and I said, we'll have the story to you by 5 a.m. the next morning. And he was like, I think he was like, oh yeah, whatever. And I stayed up all night and edited it. And we had that thing ready to roll out by 5 a.m. the next morning. And there's imperfections in the film. There's 100%, but that thing is like been shown on Joe Rogan, and it gets, I mean, at this point, like, we don't really care. I mean, some people get weird about it, but like that thing has been reused in motivational videos about the who's going to carry the boats. I don't know how many tens of millions of times. I mean, I don't go after those people. I'm just like, go use it. I don't, not like, I guess you could get weird about copyright, but whatever. Like, and yeah, it's just one of those things where we just, I mean, every time I work with Cam, like, I mean, if I got a call from Cam right now and he said, hey, let's make a film, I'm most likely going to drop everything and start filming with him and get it turned around ASAP and get it put out into the world. And I just don't think a lot of companies are doing that. And that sets us apart, I would say.
That's what I think. It also plays into the theme that we've been talking through, is that grittiness. Is like you see an opportunity and you go after it, and then I think your fast turnaround just shows like a passion for what you're doing and caring about it, because it's like, obviously you probably don't need to have it done by 5 a.m. Even Cam saying like, okay, but I think it shows a commitment and how much you value what you're doing, that isn't seen in people unless you might see it in like procrastination from a lot of people. Is like they feel that pressure last minute to do something, but I feel like being gritty and putting that work when you don't have to be is like a really cool virtue.
Yeah, and I think there's a few instances with large scale brands I've seen it done before, but for the most part, like, at least the way my mind works and most people's minds work is like, when something happens, like, I'm trying to think of an example. Okay, well, so let's say the Lakers win the championship this year, right? Imagine like out of nowhere, the second the Lakers win the championship, LeBron tweets, check out this 60-minute documentary on the finals, NBA series. No one knows about it. That thing is going to go crazy, right? So I think there's this ability to, I remember when Kevin Durant won an NBA championship, like Nike on speed dial, like had an ad ready, and it was like NBA championship. I think like the next ad was a Kevin Durant like championship ad, and it was like, I remember that sticks out. So I think that strategy, it doesn't always work, but I've always liked someone to be like, something happens in their mind, or there's something that happens in the world, and then it's like, well, let me show the film about it like right when it's fresh, versus being like, hey, we're dropping something like 2 years from now, like, good luck. It's like, I think it loses its specialness a little bit. So,
well, and it probably makes it, the other thing that goes along with it is, say Cam's followers or Goggins followers, they post on their story, their Instagram, they see that they're doing something, like, oh, I want to see what's going on. And then that video comes out the next day. Even the followers were probably blown away by it.
Exactly. And that's totally like, I think when Goggins came into town, I don't remember if Instagram Live or something on his story, it was like his crowd of millions of people knew he was in Eugene, right? And they knew he was with Cam. And then the next day there's like a film. And so that was the strategy, and I think we'll continue to use that when it works. Most recently, we were doing some work with Nike and one of their running groups, and they set this world record indoors. Set this world record indoors in in the women's DMR, and we same strategy. Like the next morning we had it mocked up, queued up, and I think same thing. I think some people internally with just some people that were questioning like how the heck was this turned around so quick. I love being part of that. That like hopefully that always just gets me excited to be like kind of behind the scenes in some hotel room or some Airbnb, like late into the hours, like editing this thing, and then boom, it's like the world gets to see it. I still get excited about that. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
No, like I started this on one of my more recent episodes, and like the title of the podcast is the What's Your Why podcast. Yeah, like we've been doing a series on kind of athleticism and athletics, but you kind of have like two roles within that. Something you're extremely passionate about. Your business, it kind of ties into your running passions as well in some ways, with some of the stories you get to tell. But you obviously you enjoy what you're doing. It seems like at least. Why do you keep doing what you do?
I think anything I got going on in my life, like I always try to have it be something that like requires hard work. And I think I really like when people are constantly like reinventing themselves for their entire life. So with storytelling, every story is like this new chapter, right? Telling some Nike athlete story and then going and telling some story about something in natural resources, and kind of, I think for me, like you're constantly getting a chance to reinvent and become better at your craft. So that would be part of it. And then I think the other part of it is just really trying to be an expert at a few things that I have a passion for. Like I'm not a big diversifier. Like I don't like surf, and then I don't like do jet skiing, or like it's like I kind of like find a few things. I'm not saying that's wrong, but for me, like I have a passion for running, I have a passion for storytelling, and I have a few other passions, and I really like to see how far they can take me and kind of laser focus on those. And you can kind of, when something doesn't feel right, you can kind of pivot a little bit. But a small handful of, the same thing with like my friend group. I have a small handful of friends, and those people mean the world to me, and I really like to like laser focus on building each other up and having success throughout our life. And that laser focus on a few things and becoming as great as you can on it, for me, I think is important. So
it's a very admirable thing to do, to focus on one thing or only a couple things. It's a debate I always have in my mind, because I do spread myself, I would say, too thin, trying to do too many hobbies. But it's the kind of the people I try to bring on here and I try to surround myself with are the people who do find success in lasering in on that one thing to become really good at it. Do you see, is that what your new career is? With maybe not new, but your current career, like have you lasered in on storytelling?
Yeah, I mean, I think like you said, the lasering in and the hyper focus on stuff for me is where I get a passion. It takes a long time. I love stuff that, I think another thing that I really like about that laser focus is I love stuff that people like. There's this world of like quick fixes, right? It's like whatever, like a diet. Like in reality, like there's no get quick fit or get lose 50 pounds or like whatever it is. Like it's like I love stuff that requires like years and decades and like a lifetime of hard work, and like that you can't fake that. You can't fake like a long-term scalability of a company. You can't fake like a lifelong pursuit of like running. You can't fake quality friends. You can't fake like great relationships, whatever it is, like.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that for me is like so important. So like if something is like in and out in like a month or something. It's like, oh, do this and like figure out like some get rich quick scheme. Like I'm not that person. Like I like the like 10, 20, 30 lifelong grind. And I also like that a lot of people don't like that. That discipline it takes to be like, I'm gonna do this for my life. And like when I'm 60, like I'll look back and be like, wow, like, that was incredible, but it took a lot of hard work. Like I love stuff like that. Part of the reason why I think I like running is it's like, I think I've been running for 20 years and like, I kind of feel like I'm just getting started in a way, not necessarily like, obviously there's a decline in athletic performance as you get older, but when I say just getting started is like the things I can do with the sport, whether it's storytelling or whether it's, doing certain races around the world, or whether it's like motivating people or helping people become better at running, like that's a lifelong pursuit for me. And those are the things that get me really excited.
Well, I think that one of the cool things that, you talked about the copyright thing a little bit, but how cool is it that one of your videos has inspired so many people?
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's important to me. It's important to me. But I always like try to put my ego aside and realize that like, their story is what did it. And then I was kind of some vehicle to, so, I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. Like I take pride in it, but at the end of the day, like, I'm just trying
I see what you're saying.
I don't want to hop on here and be like, oh,
yeah,
like I created all this. It's like, okay, like pump the brakes. Like,
yeah,
I'm very proud of the work that we do, but like, I also am very understanding that like the people I'm getting a chance to be a part of and tell their story, like they deserve most of the credit. And then if we can give them a platform, great. So,
well, yeah. And that's what, not trying to say that you're kind of like the driving force, not the driving force, kind of like the viewing platform and the ability to share it. And it could have been done by somebody else and it could have been done much differently. And the message might not have been shared as much. And it'd be just something I think that's pretty dang cool. I think you recognize that.
Yeah, no, I think, finding that balance of like, everyone has an ego. I have an ego. All my friends have egos, like, and it varies, right? And with athletics, you've got to have an ego. Like you have to. My friends that are and they would admit this, like my friends that are the best athletes in the world that I know. I mean, when the gun goes off, like their ego is like that's what makes them great, right? And you've got to be able to like shut it off and turn it on and shut it off. So even as like a filmmaker or with my running, like I always like try to keep my ego in check and be like, okay, like, you want to be known as a great filmer or a great runner or this, but like, don't let it go to your head too much, because that is an area that you don't ever want to like live in, I don't think, for too long. So
yeah, I can imagine, and I can see where you're coming from. Now there is, I won't keep it, won't make it too much longer. We're already been going for an hour now, and
yeah, it's all good. I was actually going to say I've got to hop on a call here pretty soon, so I apologize for trying to cut it short. Yeah.
What time? Can I ask one more question?
Let's go one more question. I told them 4:05, maybe like another couple minutes, then we're good.
Yeah, no worries. So it might be a deep question, and it kind of is, but have you noticed a lot of that gritty mentality, being surrounded by people like Gagos, Cam, the other really, really good athletes you've met in your life?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the people that I know that are the highest end at what they do, and this is not throwing anyone under the bus. So like, I'll just speak vaguely here. Like a lot of times there's like aspects of their life that are chaotic. Like there's chaos somewhere. They're not like this like Buddhist monk. Like there's issues somewhere in their life, and I think everyone has issues in their life, but in something they are obsessed, like beyond belief, whether it's a runner or a bow hunter or a professional this or that or whatever it is. Like, so I think like, I guess my like overall thought on it is like no one's life is like completely perfect. There's a lot of flaws in everyone. You know, I have flaws, everyone has flaws, and the people that I know that are the most successful publicly have flaws as well. But when you get a chance to see like the grittiness, like one of my good buddies is Matt Centrowitz, and you know, Olympic gold medalist, and you know, one of the best American miler, one of the best milers in the world history, right? Like when he's on, like it is going into the Rio Olympics in 2016, it was like, you know, up getting a morning run in, and then it's like, hey man, we're gonna go out or we're gonna go get dinner. It's like he'll come out and get dinner with us, but he's also on the treadmill at 8 o'clock at night before we're going to, you know, dinner, running 530 miles. Like, and I'm in there and he's, you know, we're talking like he's, you know, like Floyd Mayweather. And this is like in his basement on his second run of the day. And, you know, like that is just a level of like perfectionism that like most people just don't understand. And I think it can create some areas of, I mean, someone like Matt, who's talked to him pretty much every day, like he'd admit like some of the things that makes him a great athlete makes him potentially, you know, difficult in certain situations. But that level of obsession is, if you can figure out how to hone it in, like you don't become an Olympic gold medalist by being average. You just don't. So.
Well, that's a great way to end it. I'll let you go here, and I'll kind of send you the details of the podcast.
Yeah, man. When is this thing coming out?
It'll either come out Thursday or next Wednesday. I like to release them every Wednesday, but I also don't like to wait too long. So I'll probably release it this week, actually.
Okay, sounds good, man. Yeah. Hey, I really appreciate it. If there's anything you need, just reach out. If you ever get out to Eugene area, you always got a place to stay. So
sounds good. Well, I appreciate it so much, man. You have a great rest of your day here.
Talk to you soon.
Well, that was definitely one of my favorite episodes. Travis tells a great story, and I really enjoyed having him on. So definitely check out his content. I have a link to his work. Some of my favorite stuff that he's put out is with Cam Hanes and David Goggins, but the different stories he tells for different companies is truly insane work. It's very real. You can see the work he puts into it is very high level. And from the sounds of it, he does it with some really quick turnarounds. I appreciate your guys' time once again this week and listening to this episode. And so if you like it, give it a share. I appreciate you guys, and have a great rest of your day.